Good afternoon, everyone. Councillors, staff, members of the public and media on this public workshop. We're being recorded. Are we being live streamed? Live, so we're not live, but this will be uploaded afterwards. So for the sake of clarity, you'll try to speak one at a time and don't forget to press the button on the microphone. I don't believe we have anyone joining online. Just in terms of apologies, I'd like to put apologies in for Councillor Gladding, Councillor Tucker and Councillor Smith, who apologies for today's session. And without further ado, I'm going to pass this one over to Ken and the team to talk us through the subject matter today.
Thank you, Chair. We've also received an apology from Councillor Mitchell. And also the Interim Chief Executive, Michelle Morse, cannot be here today. And we've got an apology from our colleague, Simon Patrick. Thank you. Tēnā koutou katoa. Thank you all for being here today. Just like to acknowledge mana whenua and recognise their enduring connection to this place. For those of you in the room, very much welcome, councillors and yourself, your worship. We're joined by Greg Rosen, who's the current Program Director for Community Services, is an external consultant that's been working with us on this project, and also my colleague Alex Martin, who's the current Acting Sport and Recreation Manager. Today's session is a workshop for your understanding and feedback on the QEC Courts Extension Program. It is not a decision-making framework or session today, and it's certainly not a decision to progress the build. What is being informed today is an update from the previous administration's request to report back against the remit that we were given last year by the former council, and then to walk you through that. In terms of today's format, I would just like to comment, we would like to walk through the slide decks and then make ourselves available for any questions, answers, or any clarity that you require. There's a couple of points to note just in terms of a pathway. We possibly joined online or by members of the public today, key stakeholders and in some cases partners that are a part of this wider conversation. It's been a conversation that's been had for many years, and we'd just like to acknowledge that a lot of people have interest in not just the project we'll report against, but potential aspirations of how they could engage in opportunities that this might present depending on how we take forward the conversation. So I'm going to hand over to Greg. He will walk us through this. And then at the conclusion, we're happy to take any questions and walk through any points that you'd like clarified. Thank you.
Okay, kia ora everyone, and thanks for the opportunity to bring you up to speed with where this project is currently. We can move on to the next slides. We just cover over where we are. So in your pack, we'll just go on to slide 2. Perfect. So, of course, a decision from previous governance around this project was made in April 2025 at a request from council officers in response to an enduring conversation that commenced in 2018 around enabling capacity requirements for sporting activities at this location. That direction was to develop a concept design and bring that back to council once that was complete for further discussion and decisions. And that is the basis on which we're walking you through today. We haven't got the concept design, but we're entering into that. What we are doing is responding to 4 courts and 800 square metres of wellness centre, which we've talked about previously. So we'll go through the what evidence we've discovered as we've gone through that exercise. And of course, you'll appreciate at this stage we're working through a detailed business case. The detailed business case provides us with a clarity of options, both in what will be provided in the facility, what the cost implications are, and of course we'll be working through what the impact on operational costs are as well, and revenue. So we're also here to hear your feedback, and we'll take that on board as we go through the process. So as we've alluded to previously outside, we've talked about how long this project's been in the pipeline for the community, and the community have expressed their perspectives over that almost 10-year period. And you can see that we started off with the do nothing, and that was around was this a scheduling issue with the facilities capacity? That answer was no. A proposal was presented to deliver an additional 2 indoor courts, and for various decisions, governors have previously delayed the expenditure on the project. In the meantime, the district has materially grown, population has extended, and the need and demand on the capacity of this facility exceeded 2-court requirement, and therefore a proposal was presented back to council governors around the need to investigate and work toward 4-court facility, and that's where we are currently. So you can see that in the proposals that were manifestly drawn up for the master plan for this location, a number of facilities and box forms around what might be provided in future development for the site, and we've alluded on while we did our walk around the building, options for where the location was, and we'll cover that off in the meantime. But that is sort of the footprint of this is the QEC compound. So what is this, what is the need in this location for the project? And of course, we can refer back to some metrics which have been internationally applied, which is the Sports NZ national benchmarks. These are guidelines which are developed not only in New Zealand, but also applicable in Australia, the United Kingdom, Canada, and in China. So we've got a set of parameters or rules, measurements that we're applying. And this, of course, speaks to what the social return on investment is. And at this stage, if we were to use the base measurement, it's effectively double. So for every dollar you spend, you get $2 plus a return. There have been examples in New Zealand that have actually returned almost $10. So that is around, or speaking to the latent demand in the community, and in particular around the multimodal sports activities which this facility is attempting to address. Where are we at currently using the benchmarks from Sport New Zealand? Their baseline, and the baseline that's used internationally, is 1 indoor court based per 7,600 residents. If we were to look at the region, currently in Wanaka, there are 4 courts for a population of 23,000, which means there is a latent capacity of additional court. So if we use the benchmark, that would only be 3 courts required for Wanaka. But in Wakatipu, if we take the 45,000 residents, we can see that actually that calculates out to 6 courts. So that means there is a latent demand for an additional 4 courts on this side. And of course, it's not about which area or which location has which courts. This is about regionally, whereas this facility would provide the latent gap in the capacity for the Wakatipu area. So what does that look like in sports activities and interactions with the current site? If we look over the period that this project's been developing, we can see that latent activity has exponentially increased, where we've got indoor sports participation almost doubled, Fitness centre up by 80,000, and these are annual figures, by the way. And sporting group participation, which is probably the highest growth area, is the number of sporting groups that have now got requires capacity and ability to interact at a location has truly exceeded. So that feeds into the Sport New Zealand statistics. So what have we looked at? We didn't arrive at forecourts initially, obviously. We did explore the do nothing, which was, could scheduling alone deal with the issues at hand? Do we develop 2 courts, or do we develop 4 courts? And you can see that in the statistics that we have at the moment, we are proposing to meet that latent demand by having 4 indoor courts. The other thing that 2 courts doesn't enable, and that is to have regional or national sport activity. And we've, on the previous slide, we indicated that there was what we call a show court, which sits across the forecourts. That means that actually we could do national sports or regional sports, and that would mean that we'd have a greater seating capacity to enable that activity to actually happen. We don't get that flexibility if we were to build just 2 courts. That would not enable. Okay. So what is this project addressing? I think importantly, it provides enough capacity for longer term. It meets the recognised international standards around about the number of minimum courts, and it protects the outdoor levels of service, which is what we referred to outside, whereas not having sufficient indoor courts is forcing activity outside, which is causing a greater demand on the outdoor courts. So what's included in the current scope? Clearly it's 4 indoor courts. That's the statistics which are indicating that that's where we should be focusing. That provides us with current demand and for some future demand. Now, we want to just clarify here that on that basis, we are meeting the minimum standard of Sporting New Zealand, okay? So we're not exceeding that. Even if we were to build 4 courts, we only just meet the minimum standard. It's right-sizing the health and wellness upgrade. So again, Alex has spoken to the latent demand, the delays in getting access to those centres, and the restriction on the number of services that can be provided, which are being sought by the community. And it also gives us that show court capability as well. We've talked, as we walked around the current facility, options around about where we might locate the building. Scenario 1 is that reflects the master plan, and option 2, or scenario 2, is the one that we are currently working towards. Reason for that being is that we're talking about preserving the current infrastructure of the car park and the infrastructure underneath the car park. That represents an opportunity cost of around $6 million, which means we can incorporate that into the facility that we're planning. It also enables future growth. So if there were further extensions to the building, that can be accommodated in scenario 2. Yeah, that's probably the main reason there. The other one too is the consenting complication of the current access road, which is a paper road. If that were to be constructed over, there is a gazetting and change of access. So what are we learning? As we're going through this exercise, we're not working through this in isolation. We are engaging with other councils, understanding what they have built and understanding where their compromises were made and what they're living with post the construction of their facility. So these are all currently based in the Canterbury Greater Region, Selwyn, Christchurch and Waimakariri. And we have been looking at and talking to the initial staff that instigated those projects, and then talking to the operation staff that have living with the consequences of the design, and there's been some good learnings. Our intention is for Alex and her team to visit these locations and actually not visit them for an hour, but actually work inside those facilities and understand what the cost implications have been, what the compromises have been, and what the opportunities might be. So that will feed into our next phase, which is developing the operational specs for the proposed facility. So again, trying to leverage off what people already have done, the mistakes they've already learned, we might as well learn those because they're free of charge. Timeframes. So what have we been doing? We've obviously done a fair amount of investigation around options. We've done a fair amount of investigations around the operational requirements. We're trying to balance all of the various needs, and we've talked at length about the capacity constraints of the current facility. You've seen that there are a large number of sporting bodies that want to have access to the facility, and we've been negotiating and working through that. We have more engagement with community groups to understand how we might enable their activity through the design process. So nothing has been ruled out. Everything is possible. And what we've also done is started to benchmark costs and opportunities across other facilities throughout New Zealand that have been recently built and applying those to this option. What's next? Next, we're going to enter into the concept design, which is where we will start to elaborate floor plan, floor layout and operational requirements. That will enable us to develop the business case, which means we can come back to council with a much more robust and clarity around what the trade-offs are, what the opportunities are, what the cost implications are, and what the revenue capabilities might be. Importantly, though, it will address how we will be addressing and proposing to address the capacity requirements of the community. So lots of options to be explored, and they'll be presented back. We're suggesting that we will come back to you in September, where we'll run an interactive workshop and walk you through the operational proposals that we have on, that we've worked through, and work through with you about what the trade-offs we're proposing are, what the opportunities are, and that is an opportunity for you to further explore some of the detail, definitely around about revenue, cost, and capacity response. And then we believe that hopefully we'll give you enough information to make a decision as to whether we progress the project into detailed design. At this stage, we are open to the way in which the project would be procured, and we would come to you in September with a range of options of how that might be procured to give you maximum return on investment, but protect actually what it is we want to see. And so one of the learnings we have from a couple of other councils is that they have gone through a design build phase, but they've actually lost some of the performance that they wanted from the building because they thought they were making cost savings. Two of those buildings have now got budgets in excess of 3 million to actually fix some of those operational things that they lost out on because they were tempted by a cheaper build. Now look, those are the things that we'll be bringing to you in September so that you're fully informed around about what those options are so that you've got choices to make.
Thank you, Greg. Chair, so just in summary, This project is currently still within the LTP, and obviously we're about to enter into the phase of constructing a new LTP. And in total, the budget's spread over a number of years, totaling 42.5 million. The other points just to note, as Greg's outlined through the process we've just been through, today's a conversation about what we have done, where we've got to, the configurations that we've explored, all the inputs that have informed that. And then in summary, that piece in September, which is very much a part of getting into the detailed budgeting that a number of you will be very keen to understand. Just before I hand over the talking stick, Chair, a couple of points to note. So on Friday at the annual plan deliberations, yourself and your colleagues requested that as part of the submissions that we have received from third-party stakeholders, that we actually look to explore how we take forward some of the conversations that we have been had with varying sporting groups. That's not to derail the remit that we currently have, but we certainly have been given directive that we need to engage with them. So that is noted and will need to be factored and reported against in September. The second point, we have also been discussing what is the real potential. You'll be aware of, and it's not lost on this group at the moment, with the electrification conference occurring next door. We've also got standalone projects around electrification at our pools in particular. And again, what are the real third-party investment options? I think yourself, Chair, asked us to be open to that with future partnership opportunities. And then the last point, just before we hand over, that this is really a program that's about dealing with capacity. And one of the things which we've done to be really clear about the transparency with budget, which we report back in September, is understanding all costs associated with the construct. So we very much want to make sure it's a large amount of money in a current economic and fiscal challenging environment, but we do want to make sure all costs are known as part of our report back in September. So as I said from the outset, today's not a decision-making framework, but you may give us some clear direction, but we very much would like to offer you the opportunity to ask any points of clarity or some questions of us. Thank you.
So, questions up. I'll start with one. So, if looking at that time frame, time plan, there's a council approval that we landed approval on something in October. So,
Correct.
Does that mean that we'd need to wait till the long-term plan was signed off in the following June to ratify, I guess, that budgeting? Or is it a case of if councillors make a decision to do something in October, that is actually pressing the green light and things start moving forward? And if they do, what would be the time frame? So from the moment the project has funds committed to it, what's the expected? I'm just trying to work out whether I get to cut a ribbon or not before we get amalgamated.
No, good point. I'm just trying to read Greg's handwriting, so he'll talk to the actual budget breakdown. Thanks, Chair. Your point made about the actual timing within the LTP load, we will need to respond to the group about that. We're working on the basis that this has been on the books for 10 years, so we're anticipating this will, well, we're not expecting anything, to be fair, in this current environment. What we are planning, though, that if the directive we get today, that it remains a live conversation, that it will be a part of an LTP. And we do acknowledge that, the Three Waters entity needs to be set up and there might be some complexities around the CapEx loading. But Greg can talk to the actual breakdown of what the budget's currently set within the long-term plan. And noting that we've actually deferred or given some funding back last week, that we've only set aside a set amount for professional services for this year. We've then got the out years for the construct.
Okay, so currently in the LTP for this year, there is just under $1 million. We're only halfway spent through that. For next year, the LTP adjustment, as you know, is 1.1 million, which allows us to go through to detailed design if we were to carry forward. And then in the 27-28 year, currently in the LTP, there's 19 million, and in the 28-29, there's 19 million. Yep, so that's already sitting there. What we are thinking at the moment in the way in which the project would construct is that actually in 2027, 28, instead of 19, we would only need 15.4. And then in the 28, 29, it wouldn't be 19, but would be 27. So there would be a deferral of that in those last 2 years toward the latter third year, that it would actually require more cash.
Does that answer your question, Chair? Thank you.
This is sort of a rhetorical question. I get to ask crazy questions like this. So in 2018, we thought 2 courts is the right size. Now we think that 4 courts is the right size, and that by the time this is built, it'll almost be right. However, with our growth rate, we aren't going to see this per mat until probably 2036 or 2037, 2033 or 2032. At which point it'll either be right-sized or undersized. And so have we thought about 6 courts? And it seems to me that our cost per court goes down the more we have. And yes, I realize I'm being hypocritical because we spent Thursday trying to find just a few $1 million to get our rates down. So I realize I'm speaking out of both sides of my mouth. But did we consider 6 courts? And is that a legitimate question?
Yeah, it's a legitimate question.
It's a legitimate question through you, Chair. And look, thank you for raising it, because candidly, with the amount of growth that we're seeing through this district, and you know, whether it's through fast track or just current planning of developments, we recognise with the work that we've been doing with our the likes of Greg, but also Simon and Alex and others, the Southern Corridor is clearly going to be a big housing development for the future. So the 4 courts at some point you anticipate will be capacity. So what we're reporting back today, as I said on the outset, is the remit the previous council had given us, being very clear to report back on 2 to 4 courts. 4 courts is very much what meets the current and future demand, plus the 800 square metre wellness/gym fitness space. We have talked about 6 courts, but we have not put pen to paper as part of that configuration or costing, because we have very much today reported back against what we've been asked to do so. But your question is well noted, because if you start looking at the stats on growth and our head count for the wider district, noting we are the 6th largest district in the country and real potential to grow, we will need to be thinking about future social infrastructure that provides for more courts as we go forward. So yes, your point's well made, and we have considered it, but we have not reported against it because we have not been asked to do so.
Just using Q's terms, just riffing off Q's question, is this now the point where we should, if we had a desire as the new council to look at 6 courts before it's too late and we end up with a subpar 4 court, which by the time it's commissioned and built will only have a few years left before it's outgrown again, and we find ourselves in the same position we are right now today. So I do wonder if you need direction today or whenever from the council as to whether we do need to look at a high, medium and a low option, rather than just the 4 and the 2 and the 0 option, do nothing. And the reason I say that is because my son's a basketball player, rep basketball player. He spends a lot of time in Dunedin and in Invercargill at those amazing facilities. And both those facilities have been funded not just by rates, but by private third-party investors. And for a 6 court, potential 6 court, there is an opportunity, and I'm not saying that you've done the work yet, but there may be an opportunity to do some work on this, of looking at how we genuinely engage with third-party investors to look at something that's actually built for the future rather than built for just for now, which is probably just too late.
Through you, Chair, thank you, Councillor, for the question. We would welcome direction, and we should note, and we're joined by members of the community who are actually probably frustrated by the ability to get some cut through with how they could partner meaningfully around some of that capital investment you've talked about. So yes to that. Secondly, that 6 court configuration, if that was a directive that we received today, we would go away and report back on that as part of our September commitment. And would clearly, the way that you've structured it, we're working on the pretense right now, 2 courts is not going to make a difference. So we are certainly in the 4-court realm, noting costings to be, tabled. But if you were to say you want an option around 4 and 6 courts, we would certainly go away and do so and report back against that. And as you've noted, it's scale, right? There'll be scalability. So again, there'll be some other factors in that. And just to round that out and play it back so we're quite clear and not, I guess, slightly in shock of the opportunity, is making sure that we also look at how we would genuinely look at opening that market window to partner meaningfully, so partners and third-party investors or partners could come on board.
Yeah, and I guess what I'm asking is, when you put a 6-court option on the table, you get a sense of what the community is thinking, whether they support that or not, but it also then forces us to be a bit more innovative with our funding model, which the traditional model is ratepayer pays for everything.
Yeah.
But as I said, you look at the Dunedin Stadium, for example, it's not the ratepayer that paid for that, or most of it. It's certainly, it's got a name to it,
Yes.
which is private funded. So there are opportunities there, but we just need to be a bit more innovative in how we fund these things.
And just through you, Chair, just to finalise that conversation, Councillor, look, as Greg alluded to, the team through Alex and Simon, we're actually been paying a lot of attention to some of the trust models that you've seen around the country, and even in the schooling space. I mean, schools of the future, they're good to partner with, but they're also seeing a capacity loading, right? So you need these things standalone so, community can actually access them. So we would be very open to reporting back in September about what some of those mechanisms genuinely look like. But again, on the confirmation of today, we will take a lead that we report against the costings for a 4-court option, including the operational piece that Greg's touched on, which needs to be informed by our detailed business case. And we would also look at a 6-court option.
What do you need from us for direction? Because you've obviously got my opinion on it.
Well, maybe some, unless there's any contrary discussion, really, but...
I think Heath was going to speak and then Nicola, but bear in mind that who are we to contradict the chair of the Community and Environment Committee?
I would just like to maybe jump in there and maybe nip that in the bud from my side of the table and understand the point completely that by the time it's built, we'll have outgrown it. But I'd also like to expedite this whole exercise, given that it's going to be 12 years if we start working towards the 4 courts today. It'll be 12 years from 2018 before we're opening the doors in it. I think if we go away and start scoping up 6 courts, it won't fit where we need to put it. And we'll be another 10 years before we start deciding to build that, and then we'll need 8. So I would probably prefer, if I'm giving direction, that we get the 4 done with the capacity for the show court. As soon as it's finished, we start building Ladies Mile, Southern Corridor, or Wanaka. That's where our next 2 or next 4 courts go then. But I think re-scoping it, it's just been re-scoped from 2 to 4 to 6 to 8. We'll just go around in circles. My kids will grow up and die before this happens, if that's the case. So I would, maybe if you've got any comments, how do we expedite this? It's in the long-term plan. How do we get a digger out there in the next 18 months?
Through you, Chair, you give us a directive and we come back and we reform and reforecast what we've put in front of you today, and we could report back on that. I'm going to hold ourselves to account by the end of next week. And
my concern about that is you reforecast it and then it gets more expensive and then we all get squirrely and say, maybe it is worth going for 6. We need this fast, we need it now, we need it...
Through you, Chair, when I talk forecast, I'm talking about the actual program. Yeah, not the funding. Excuse me, we could look at how we could reschedule to meet your accelerated request to bring that program forward. Is that better language?
I think so. I mean, in an ideal world, how we could bring and accelerate the programme forward while still allowing for some considerations around opportunity so that we don't lose that opportunity. I hear Councillor Copeland's, frustration about the pace of this, and I certainly hear the argument about we don't want to slow it down with another decision. I think we all want to move fast. We all want to do the right thing. We don't want to build something that's out of date when it's built. So, if we can magic up the sweet spot that does everything as soon as possible, that'd be great.
Chair, so just for clarification, excuse me, Councillor, I wasn't using the word reforecast for funding. We're probably just sitting there a little bit. So we will come back to this table with an update in 2 weeks of what a new looked program could be to work within the timeframes of a forecourt construct as what we've currently got as a configuration to look at how we could achieve that in the next 18 plus months. Is that's what's been asked as well?
Oh, obviously, my perspective. Anyone support it? If you don't, I'll let it go.
Well, I mean, I see no reason why we can have both, eh? Yeah, we can have a programme for a forecourt, but equally staff might be able to say, well, if you're serious about 6, this is how that might impact the programme. So I think we've got those, because it might be, well, we can do 6, we just need another couple of months. I don't know, money aside, but that's a separate conversation.
So, Chair, I'll just get my composure. So we will come back in 2 weeks to this table with a time frame to accelerate the councillor's request, both councillors' request to have this brought forward within an 18-month window for a forecourt, and we will also, in that 2 week, inform how we would then look at the 6-court option, but noting the point, not at the cost of another 10 years.
Sure.
We've got this crystal clear?
Something that might help. If you go to that slide where you've forecasted the Queenstown population, when I looked at that, I was like, that's not enough people. So you had 45,000 as the population, but it's actually in 2025, it's 53,000, nearly 54,000. And so that would require in itself 7 courts.
Slide 6, please.
53.
Oh,
Includes what?
includes. Okay.
That one, no, you've gone too far. There you go. That one.
No, that's that one.
Is this the one, Councillor King?
Okay, so what contribute is just 45,000. Right, okay. However, still, when you add like the 5% population growth,
correct.
like
We
You,
haven't escalated that. We've
you're
just gone for
definitely
the current.
maxing out at 4, and so that's a very good business case to go to 6. I would say something else. I just to make it faster, expedite it. I can see that some people, councillors, would probably want the opportunity to have like when I saw the month time frame in between when you come back for the workshop and then we make a decision. I felt like that could be quite tight for some people to have concerns and then be able to bring them to you, and then you have to change them or whatever. So potentially, if there was that opportunity to bring the information before that workshop so that we could then talk to you before that, and then it's just, not rushing for a council decision on the September meeting.
Made, and what we will do with the clear action of coming back to this week's about the
Yeah.
rescheduled program, I've got that language right, we will indicate the touch points we need to report back to this table. So what we have been doing is working with the committee, but given the scale and potential pace, it will need to come to council, and it should just come to council so we can get informed decision around what workshops and then what inform the report.
Mm-hmm. Great.
We'll factor that as part of our report back in 2 weeks.
Thanks, John. Ken, would a 6-court facility facilitate a lot more show court type events like netball tests, or could that still be achieved with a 4-court facility?
Through you, Chair, I'll have first crack, eh?
You go.
Yeah. So the case studies that's been captured here would indicate yes. And what it gives you actually is a greater configuration of how you do the stackable or portable seating that comes with those sorts of opportunities, whether it's a show court for netball, basketball, or any configuration. We've got members of the squash fraternity here. You know, you can put those glass boxes in that you've now seen around the world where they might be popping up in a supermarket or a mall. You know, 6 courts is clearly space that you can reconfigure to match how you want in terms of some of those opportunities for, you know, local, regional and national, international hosting. And again though, just to note that there's always, you know, within that configuration, there's always sometimes a compromise to be achieved about how you want to actually see that space used from grassroots right through. But that's the aspirational piece, right? Because who doesn't want to see their top end performing athletes at the best of their game in amongst their local communities? And we're seeing that right now in varying sports around the country, where role models continue to bring people into sport and recreation as part of the wider community. So yes.
Couple of questions from me. And again, looking at those numbers of the population to facilities, but clearly that doesn't take into account our visiting population. So I'd be interested in, we don't need to have it now, but at some point understanding what's the extent of use of, whether it's the gyms or some of the, you know, casual facilities of our visiting population, because we want to make sure we're capturing the cost. And yeah, where those lie, if it's not through the gate, whether that's in the rating differentials for visitor accommodation and some of those other things, because the question will then, you know, be how do we fund some of this stuff? So it'd be really good to understand that mix. Also, you know, if we get a day where we end up with some sort of local accommodation levy, then again that speaks to our ability to use some of that to fund the infrastructure that we're building, knowing that it's not just for locals, it's for visitors. So that's just one thing to throw on the table at some point.
Would you like me to just answer?
If you
Look, it's a point well made for one simple reason. So we currently have 2 courts here, and you host an event, doesn't matter what it is, that then is what ties up the building. You potentially have another standalone facility, as you've seen with the configuration of 4 or 6 courts, that then still provides that opportunity, but you continue to commit to your community. And what we can report back, Chair, is we can give you all the stats of what we host from, you know, events right through. It's even like when we do the world-renowned marathon event. But what we also capture is what is the missed opportunity, and that's that whole capacity piece. And what you'll find is we have just opened up a completely different gamut. And we often get a lot of requests through the team for a whole host of opportunities that we just can't actually, you know, fit into the current capacity model. And some of them would be a really good fit for a whole host of reasons. But, you know, we can certainly give you some stats around that.
Thank you. And you know, as you'll know, in saying we've had, you know, discussions about cricket and, you know, sort of professional leagues and other bits and pieces, you know, that tension for use of the turf. Yeah, there's going to be a foreseeable demand for at some point for a basketball franchise to be based in this district, because, you know, why wouldn't they? You know, I think they'd like to be. Do we see opportunities for creative partnerships with a professional franchise that would have a key use of an indoor court?
I think this conversation today gives us, you know, building on what you as a group gave us as directives on Friday, provides a clear path for us to look at those. I've had experience in how you engage with the franchise sporting entity, and they come with some quite clear requirements, you know, and access is part of that. But we can again report back on that, and why would you not? Because that's part of that third-party investment opportunity. And, you know, any good partnership often ends with a compromise, but you need to understand what the long-term benefits of that could be, including that investment. But bigger than the funding is actually the spin-off of how young people can see what their future role models look like, and how that attracts them to different sport and opportunities of that nature. And all the science backs that up. You know, so again, I think on the directive today, we'll add that to the action piece, that you're expecting that as a clear line of sight that we are reporting against what potential. And we have been approached even at a local level by investors that are keen to do something around a profiled sport or a franchise. So we could certainly bring that back to the table, Chair.
Yeah, thanks. I didn't know how much that was public, but it is now. So,
No, I'm talking about previous. I haven't labelled any.
okay, no, that appreciate that.
Yep, great.
We've got any Q?
Simple question, and maybe you can answer this. There's a six-court option, and if you decided on the six-court option, does that slow down this timeline at all? Does that slow down the schedule? Does it slow down the deliverables? Are we per piece, so I can ask the Copeland's question, is this slowing things down by bringing the six-court option?
We'd have to come back to you around about the design team, what the additional effort would be for the design team to look at a 4-court option and a 6-court option. I can't answer that to you today. We'd have to go back to the design team. What do I commit the design team to that expectation? We'd have to find out exactly for you.
So through you, Chair, Councillor, we would come back to you within the 2-week window.
I just keep on advocating for looking at bigger courts for the reason that, by the time we hit a population size of 60,000, which is only 15,000 more than what we have now, we will be hitting that ceiling of the national average where we need more courts, 6 courts, versus the 4 that we're currently discussing. So this is why I'm sort of thinking, well, if it's not going to largely increase the scope and the time frame that we're looking at, we should be looking at it as a consideration. And we may then just pass it over and say, no, it costs too much. We can't get the third-party funding. But while we have the opportunity now at the beginning, I guess, of it, even though it's been going for 10 years, we should at least consider it. And that's probably all I need to say now.
So we're quite clear. One side of the table would like us to crack on with the 6 full-court option, and the other side would like to make sure it's done without interfering to bringing forward accelerated timeframes.
Can I just say something? Heath was speaking for himself, not to this side of the table.
Yeah, noted.
Just as I'm speaking for myself, then we've only got 2 courts at the moment. Remember, the 4-court option gives us 6. The 6-court gives us 8. But then I'd say, well, let's just wait until we stop growing and then right size all of our courts. It might be 10, it might be 12 when that happens. So.
I think one point to note here, whether it's, the professional sporting and recreation opportunities with the franchise opportunity, whatever that could potentially look like, right through. One of the things that we enjoy in this community is a very active community. And we've seen the tsunami of what pickleball presented in a capacity slot that started out quite gentle at a quiet time on a morning slot in our facilities. Now we have serious numbers that pack out some of our facilities. So, what this also creates is not just the top end, but also in amongst that, we have one of the most probably predominantly active communities of health and people, regardless of where they find themselves, from, young right through, enjoy a range of opportunities that we provide. And I think we need to make sure those data points are also reflected back on our update that we give this table.
Now, thank you for that. Just from a cost point of view, the bigger the square build you're building, the cheaper per square metre it's going to work out, because you've got one set of consenting, you've got one set of design, you've got one set of disruption. So to do something and then within a few years know that you're going to have to do something, start again, there is a opportunity cost of doing that. So, which is why the best time to have done this was 10 years ago. But yeah, I'm very comfortable with your take on the direction. And you'll probably need to go and have a couple of coffees and work on where we go from here.
So there's no more conversation. This is... So I just need to repeat it back one more time. So on the directive of today, we're to report back in 2 weeks. And in that 2-week time frame, we will inform how we can accelerate a program. We are to inform that program being based on 4 courts, and we're to inform a program being based on 6 courts. And then on the balance of that, we continue down the path to September, but we are obviously looking at in the next 2 weeks looking at how we can bring forward September's milestone so that this table receives an oversight on what the breakdowns of costs are for both forecourt and six-court options, which include the operational model. I'm just playing this out because I can just about hear Greg's, our team, we're all part of it. And the business case needs to be reformed, and we need to inform this table of the costs associated with both options.
Yeah, that sounds pretty good. I think you've got that pretty good. And I just want to say I'm not against six courts. And I look forward to seeing that bit of modelling come back. And what I will like to see is if it can fit on the green space out there, if there's enough space for the six courts, and if not, what the plan is or where it would go. Not 15 options of where it could go, but where it would go. And I think the rest of it you got bang on.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor, through you, Chair. I think that's a good point. We don't want to spend, like you said, this has been 10 years in the making. We just need to come back on. This is where we've got configurations that we know about the services, the car park, all the costs. We just need to look at how 6 versus 4 works. And then the final piece of summary, now I've got my composure back, is making sure we work alongside our key stakeholders as directed around those third-party opportunities. So we carry down, with the remit we currently have, which is the 800 square metres of wellbeing and health, plus the 4 six courts, plus talking to our community about what those other elements could be and making sure you've got clear line of sight. Correct? Can we just thank you for your time today?
Thank you.
And the direction. Thank you very much.